If you dream of making a change in the world by using your business skills, this is the program for you. At C3, we believe that making money by doing good is not only possible, but necessary to solve pressing social and environmental issues permanently. Although this is not an easy thing to do. Both philanthropic and commercial organizations are converging towards what we call for-purpose organizations. A for-purpose organization could be a CSR-focused business, a financially sustainable nonprofit, or a social business. So what is a social enterprise? A social enterprise is an organization that embeds a social or environmental mission into its core strategy and business model. Social enterprises are independent and self-sustainable. More than half of their proceeds need to come from commercial activities, and more than half of their profits get reinvested in their social mission. Their social or environmental impact needs to be proven and sizable. After years of dealing with early-stage social enterprises, C3 has designed the journey that an aspiring social entrepreneur should go through in order to build a successful organization. We have identified 2 key stages. The first stage is the ideation phase. This is a very important phase during which the social entrepreneur needs to focus on the social business idea and get the right fundamentals in place. The second stage is the startup phase. This phase is about getting into the details of the business plan, as well as setting up and launching the company. In the following slides, we will focus on the building blocks specific to enterprises that have a social mission at the core of their strategy. We'll take a look at developing a theory of change, aligning social impact and financial performance, aligning stakeholders, and conducting a social impact assessment. Other building blocks, such as having a sound business model, a sensible set of go-to market strategies, an appropriate corporate structure, and sufficient funding, are as important. A social enterprise's success also depends on its business performance. In Professor Yunus's words, social business can't expect to win customers just because it's run by nice people with good intentions. The journey of a social entrepreneur should start with identifying a social issue close to his or her heart and developing a theory of change. The theory of change identifies the root cause of a social issue. It explains what the social venture can do to address this root cause and how this will happen. Ultimately, the theory of change describes why the social venture will lead to positive social impact. Here are some examples of theories of change. If a customer's water usage is metered and they have to pay a reasonable price for it, they will consume less water. If women in Africa have access to and control over birth control methods, AIDS will be less widespread. If low-income, marginalized teenagers have experience in running a business, they will be more successful in their adult careers. If people buy unsweetened organic yogurt instead of non-organic yogurt that may be full of pesticides or sugar, their health will improve. To fully develop a meaningful theory of change, an entrepreneur has to identify the target population of intended beneficiaries and assess their profile, their demographics, needs, way of life, decision-making processes, social hierarchies, and so forth. Define the social and/or environmental results the social enterprise is trying to achieve. Provide a timeline for impact. Develop strategies and tactical plans to reach the social impact goals, and identify what is required to scale in terms of budget and resources. Analyze the facts on the ground, which is where the social enterprise is operating. An entrepreneur must pay attention to potential challenges and potential impact on stakeholders other than the target population of beneficiaries. Finally, an entrepreneur needs to test and test again the assumptions made in the theory of change. He or she must interview key stakeholders, run pilot programs, and do extensive market research. Once the theory of change is developed, it is important to develop a business idea that addresses the root cause and defines a sustainable business model which will solve the problem. An organization's social mission must be aligned with its business performance. The more the financial gain, the more the social impact, and vice versa. If the model does not allow for an alignment of these two objectives, then the social entrepreneur will be continuously making trade-offs between the desired social impact and financial performance. A straightforward way to align the social mission to the business performance is to make sure that the ultimate beneficiaries are included in the business value chain. Beneficiaries can be customers. Social impact can be achieved through products or services designed specifically for low-income communities who are often ignored by marketeers. A specially designed product or service sold at appropriate price points and distributed through low-cost channels has a greater chance of achieving social impact. Beneficiaries can also be suppliers. Social impact is achieved through products or services bought from marginalized communities, where impoverished families are trained to produce a product. This product is then sold to higher income communities, often through markets and cooperatives, but increasingly via online platforms. Beneficiaries can be employees. Social impact is achieved through paying salaries to marginalized individuals, people with special needs, young offenders, destitute women, etc. There are other ways to embed a social mission into a business model. One example is the one-for-one movement introduced by TOMS, which we mentioned in Module 2. For each pair of shoes or glasses that TOMS sells, another pair is donated to a child in need. The cost of production is optimized, and the product quality is good enough for TOMS to price their products at a level that allows them to meet their one-for-one commitment. While defining the idea, which consists of a social mission plus a business model, the entrepreneur should perform a thorough analysis of the context, in particular the potential impact on all possible stakeholders. As much as possible, the social entrepreneur needs to align the interests of their stakeholders to the enterprise's future activities and objectives. We are very keen to see a social enterprise scale, as this is where the social impact really kicks in. And key to this scalability is stakeholder mapping: who they are, what they are interested in, what drives them, etc. For a social enterprise idea to be truly successful, all stakeholders need to be aligned to the same objectives, both in terms of financial performance and in terms of social impact. Where stakeholders are not aligned, the sustainability, scalability, and credibility of the social enterprise is at risk. For example, TOMS has been widely criticized for not having considered the negative impact of their donations on local shoe producers. The final step of stage 1, the ideation stage, is developing a strategy on how to measure and prove social impact. If this seems really difficult, then it might be worthwhile going back to the theory of change to test it. Challenges in defining your impact may be due to a weak theory of change. The social impact assessment should be planned in the early stages of the social enterprise's development. Once the theory of change is clear, best practice would involve mapping and analyzing the impact value chain and identifying relevant social impact indicators to be measured and tracked. It is useful to translate the company's social impact into dollar value by calculating the social return on investment, although other ways to quantify social impact are also available. The impact value chain is a tool that illustrates how the enterprise's activities lead to the desired outcome and impact. The impact value chain builds on your theory of change by articulating the relationship between the activities or inputs, the outputs, outcomes, and impact. Inputs are the resources used to run the organization or activity, such as money, people, facilities, and equipment. Activities are the core or primary initiatives. Outputs are measurable units of production created by the activities of a business or organization. An output can be a good or service delivered, for example, the number of people trained, or a byproduct of that service. Outputs are operational variables that correlate with the ultimate desired social outcome of the venture. Outcomes are the ultimate changes you are trying to make, as well as the intended and unintended side effects of the business. For a foam manufacturer, for example, outcomes could include the reduced emissions and water consumption due to less chemicals being used in foam production. Outcomes are always expressed as a change, an increase or a decrease of some factor. Often, the enterprise is not capable of measuring changes in outcomes, but it has some idea about the outcomes it desires, that is, the social benefits. The enterprise can define and measure outputs that are good outcome proxies. A proxy is a metric or statistic used in social science surveys and other research as an approximation of a desired measure that is unfeasible or inconvenient to obtain. One thing to remember is that you need to constantly evaluate the social impact outcomes and realign your activities, focus, and efforts to reach your social impact goals. The key elements of a business plan should be thought through. You don't necessarily have to prepare a final document if this is not required by stakeholders or potential investors. However, key strategies such as market segmentation, marketing and distribution strategies, as well as governance and organizational structure, need to be well defined before launching a social enterprise. Once key strategies are set, it is easier to decide on the most suitable legal structure. Currently, in the MENA region, there are two options. The first is a nonprofit license. This allows an organization to raise donations, but prohibits the sale of products or services. The second option is a for-profit license. This allows an organization to sell products or services, but the organization is not allowed to fundraise. To get started, a social enterprise often needs funding. Usually this comes from the founder, who works for free, and from family and friends. The more bootstrapped a startup is, the smarter the decision-making. As a company grows, so does its need for cash flow. At any stage, it is important that entrepreneurs assess the pros and cons of all funding options and choose investors that share the same values and objectives. Pitching your social enterprise idea to potential investors is challenging, more so than you might think. We highly recommend that you put off meeting investors until you are thoroughly prepared. Lastly, don't forget to enjoy your journey as a social entrepreneur. No rewards are effortless, and never forget why you started this adventure. To get ready to make a change in the world, make sure you join the vibrant C3 community of social entrepreneurs and volunteers. Discover how it works by visiting our website or giving us a shout via email or social media. Register online and start using the power of business to make a change in the world.